We are about to go live. I am thrilled to have Iris Berger joining us. She is going to talk today about her Sumatra Megatransect. So if you're like me, I might not know what a megatransect is. So we're excited to find out a little bit about one of the most biodiverse and amazing regions in the world, and how Iris, at an age where most of us are seeking out what movie to watch next, undertook one of the coolest expeditions I can imagine in pursuit of some really, really cool stories of biodiversity and conservation. So without further ado, thanks so much for joining us, Iris, and tell us a little bit about your story.
Thanks so much for having us. Well, I first need to get the sharing screen things right. Been a bit of a grandmother when it comes to technology, but let's see.
We can save the world and we can share our screens all at the same time.
No one is.
You are good.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah, just make it full screen. I'll let you know the moment you're good and we'll go live and dive in. That should do it. Perfect. Go for it.
Excellent. Well, I don't even quite know what the megatransect is. Kind of a made-up word, but I'll share stories from the one I did in Sumatra anyway. So I'm Iris. I'm currently doing a master's in biodiversity and conservation at the University of Oxford. So I was obviously hugely excited by the prospect of speaking at the Global Biodiversity Festival this weekend. So I seem to have some trouble in focusing on one particular research topic. I did my undergraduate dissertation on chimpanzee diet and tool use in Uganda. I've also done some research in Brazil, where I looked at wildlife corridors at the border between the Amazon and Cerrado savanna. And I will be doing my PhD in crop pollination and wider biodiversity conservation in India. Today, I will be sharing stories from the Sumatra Megatransect I did back in 2016. So after first year of my undergraduate university degree, I gained some first-time fieldwork experience in the Peruvian Amazon. I also wanted to challenge myself physically and sort of do my own little adventure, and I cycled across Bolivia. But the following year, when I was 19, just about to turn 20, I really wanted to combine the two and plan my own expedition that had some sort of scientific merit to it and not just be a simple fun little adventure. So my partner, Ollie Broad, decided to explore the Indonesian island and Sumatra is the only place on Earth where you can find elephants, rhinos, orangutans, all in one place. And unfortunately, between 1990 and 2010, Sumatra lost about 40% of its old growth forest, and it really became some sort of global epicenter of tropical deforestation, fires, and carbon emissions. But as you can see from the map, the forests of northern Sumatra have remained relatively intact. And this stems partly from the fact that Sumatra's most northern province, called Aceh, has a history of political independence and resistance to control by outsiders, including former Dutch colonists and the Indonesian government. So this sort of fighting for independence occurred until 2004. And this, well, Sumatra actually remains semi-autonomous to this day and really explains why there's still a lot of intact forest left, and why there's so much to explore from a scientific standpoint of view, and why there's so much, why it is so important to conserve forests there. So Ollie and I initially thought about going to a remote valley in the Loisa National Park, which is the one encircled in purple on the map. But because it is a national park, we would have to obtain a lot of permits, and we would have to take about 5 government officials with us, which would have been essentially impossible. So luckily, we came across these 2 incredible Sumatran mountaineers called Roy and Said. And they told us about this mountain and the surrounding forests they had been to. And it sounded amazingly intact and incredibly biodiverse, but no research team had ever been there before. And I think this was really perfect for Ollie and I, because we were, well, and still are, very early on in our research career. So we didn't have a big budget or high letters to do a large scale, scientifically super rigorous project. But here it seemed like even collecting baseline biodiversity data could have potential proper conservation implications. And I think this is the beauty of citizen science in general, that it allows people that have potentially biology or even science to collect data that could potentially be scientifically invaluable and could lead to the conservation of a species or an area. So the four of us set off to climb Mount Lembu to essentially add diversity and abundance along the so it's not as scientifically rigorous as placing randomly short transects in a certain area, because it would just be a very, very long line transect to get to the top and back. So we started off following a river, which meant that our hiking boots were damp for the rest of our trip. We tried to smoke them out, but essentially it ended just up smelling of smoke and still being damp, so not ideal. But it got actually harder once we had left that riverbed, because, well, the riverbed was relatively flat, but then we had to start climbing the slopes. And, well, Mount Lembu's forests are incredibly dense and maybe not what you imagine a tropical forest to be like. You don't have these really maybe somewhat open, large trees, but it's very extremely dense, covered in layers and layers of moss. So sometimes you would sort of fall into a hole and you would have moss right up to your hips. You would also have a lot of rattan, which is the thing seen on the right, wrapped around the trees. And as you can see from these horrible looking spikes, once they attach to your skin or your clothes and you just move a centimetre, it just ripped so much fun. And because the forest is so thick, there are obviously no trails because people don't do the fun little hiking expeditions there. Roy and Saeed had the daunting task of cutting through with machetes. I would have not wanted to touch the machete because it would have been dangerous for everyone, but it meant we could cover about 1.5 or at most 2.5 kilometres a day. And this was really the hardest hiking I've ever done in my life. Roy and Zaid also had the challenging task of navigating us through this maze of green. Absolutely impressive work, because we had essentially just a printed off map from Google Earth with us and a GPS that never had signal because the forest was so dense. But for me, I think it was really the combination of being pushed physically so hard, but still having to collect valuable scientific data at the same time, which was, well, an immense challenge, but also essentially why it was so rewarding. And I guess why we went there in the first place. And that's probably what maybe separates fieldwork from some old school expedition style. I mean, I've conducted a fair amount of fieldwork in the past, and I've stayed at some pretty fancy research stations. In Brazil, for example, I had a shower, a flushing toilet. I did share with some frogs, but nonetheless, I got fed like cake on almost a daily basis. I mean, I dined better than I would do normally at home, but certainly this was not the case in Sumatra. I mean, we obviously had to carry our own food. So it was 90% rice and about 5 biscuits for lunch. So certainly not enough energy for what we're exposed to. I mean, I got back from the forest though, so we lost about 5 centimeters of dirt on my skin. But I think being in such an extremely remote place has a very special feel to it. And I think it is really important to be reminded that there's essentially so much left to explore. I mean, probably most of the animals we encountered had never met humans before. Ollie and I were lucky enough to go to Loyes National Park later on, and we had the incredible encounter with an orangutan. But the whole region is quite set up for ecotourism, and they're quite used to people there. So it had very much a almost zoo-like feel to it. Still amazing, but the animals around Mount Lembu reacted very differently to our presence. I mean, they were curious, but it's shy because, I mean, this was the first human encounter probably ever. I mean, also, I will never forget Roy's immense love for orchids. We had to remind him at time because it was quite illegal because these are very rare species in parts. And but it showed me really the importance of paying attention to details. I mean, it's very easy when you're physically so tired to go into some sort of trance and just place one step after another and try not to fall over, sort of thing. But you have to collect data at the same time. So you have to pay attention to the tiger footprints, to some sort of elusive tiny bird somewhere in the distance in the dark moss forest at the same time. And all that while you could probably fall asleep while standing upright. So yeah, it certainly taught me a lot about appreciating really this. So actually, I just turned 20 when I was there and got this sort of jelly orange chemical thing that was my birthday replacement. But I mean, that's what you got, and it's amazing. And I was just end up spending about 20 minutes at one point poking a mimosa plant, which is the one that folds up its leaves up and touch. I really hope it didn't kill the plant actually, but it should be fine. So eventually we did make it up to Mount Lembu. I mean, in terms of our findings, it was certainly not something scientifically groundbreaking, but we did collect a lot of data on birds and the diversity, and in parts we recorded species above the elevational height they were thought to exist or slightly beyond the range. But it was essentially just baseline biodiversity data that didn't exist before. You might also wonder why I haven't shown you any photos of birds or gibbons or anything maybe slightly more charismatic. Well, they're really hard to photograph. And especially it can get really, really dark and almost claustrophobic in these dense forests, and catching a fast-moving bird in that conditions is impossible. It's really incredible when you get to the top of one of these ridges and you actually see what's around you, because most of the time when you're in this dense moss forest, you really don't see very much, and you're not really aware of what's almost around you in the wider landscape. But when you get to the top of a ridge and you just see mountains or hills, whatever you want to call them, covered in forest, and you just can't see an end to it. And I mean, there must be so much out there that's unexplored, animals and plants completely unknown to science. And just knowing, having this existence value of knowing that there's so much left to explore is, well, gives me a lot of joy. Though I do note the Loyes National Park is obviously protected and that doesn't mean that there's no human encroachment occurring whatsoever. You might have heard in the news that there's still illegal logging and poaching going on, but it has legal protection, whereas Mount Lembu's forests are completely unprotected. And I think it's really our duty, therefore, to ensure, I mean, these forests have been there for so long, and I think we really must, and we can save these forests. I think we do, with people like Roy and Zaid being so eager to discover and share stories of Sumatra's last wild places. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Iris, for such a beautiful presentation. And again, you know, our people that we've shared over the last 2 days have been incredible. I think you are our youngest speaker to come in, and you've done so much at such a young age, which is just incredible. My question for you is, my first question for you is, as someone who is getting into this field for the, at a young age, who's diving in with so much field work all around the world, do you have hope for wildlife? I mean, it's something where younger generations, like 16-year-olds and younger, are doing so much to preserve it and highlight some of the difficulties that are being faced around the world. But personally, what's your thought?
No, of course they do. I mean, what point is there doing studying it in the first place? Otherwise,
that's what I was hoping for.
No, I mean, I definitely do. I mean, there's certainly, I think it's like finding balance between having hope and being, okay, we have to be realistic. And then certainly there's a lot of bad stuff and, a lot of horrible data coming out. And, I guess it's like finding a balance between remaining hopeful, but grounded and.
Yeah. Oh, Iris, you cut out for just a second. Let's get you back. Sorry about that, everybody. All right, while we get Iris back over the next minute, just a quick heads up, and apologies again for having to end the broadcast after our last program, but we're back on track now and viewers are pouring in, so we really appreciate you guys tuning in from all over the world. Again, over 90 countries have tuned in the last 2.5 days, so we've been so appreciating you guys joining us as we highlight some amazing conservation. Let's just bug Iris. I'm going to send her a quick message here. Iris. Back in. All right. Go back to me for a speaker view for a minute. All right. So while we're waiting to get Iris back in properly, and I'm sorry the connection died out, how unfortunate. A few quick notes. Again, the Global Biodiversity Festival is free for everyone to tune in. It has been fantastic, highlighting people from all across the globe. Again, today, Seychelles, Switzerland, the UK, so many more amazing countries. And we're going to keep that going in just a minute, which is really exciting. We are encouraging you to share your own pictures of backyard biodiversity with hashtag #BackyardBio and with hashtag Global BioFest. But it looks like Iris is back, so let's dive back in with her. Hey, Iris, can you hear me? Maybe, kind of, sort of. It wants to work. I can,
yeah. Sorry, I'm just fine in the middle of it.
Helps a lot. So we were in the middle of answering the first question, which is, sort of that you have so much hope for wildlife, and you're recognizing some of the challenges associated with conservation. So how do you strike that balance between, really highlighting some of the dire things that have been talked about for wildlife, and you're recognizing some of the challenges associated with conservation. So how do you strike that balance between, really highlighting some of the dire things that have been talked about from a huge variety of agencies over the last years, with this internal, an essential positivity that you have, and that we've been highlighting all week long? How do you find that essential positivity that you have, and that we've been highlighting all week long? How do you find that? You can hear me. For your amazing generosity. Every dollar we raise above our goal will go right back into some of the amazing other conservation organizations we have featured over the last 2 days. So if you've come in today, you've seen conservation through public health, Ewaso Lions, yesterday Global Penguin Society, so many more great groups. And so we're hoping to give back to them as well. Iris, take 3. Let's see if we can do this together. I believe in us. How's it going? You're sort of half in.
Hopefully, touch wood.
Touch wood. We're knocking. Okay. So in lieu of having 5 minutes, in lieu of having 5 minutes and with some connection difficulties, Iris, I want to ask what's next for you. I mean, this is such an incredible project you got a chance to do. What are you working on now, and where are you going to next? Where should we look for you on planet Earth in the near future when it opens up again?
So at the moment, I'm planning an expedition to Guinea to look at West African lions, just because I'm currently doing a master's and it's all desk-based, so I'm very desperate to see the real world again. And then I'll be doing my PhD and looking at crop pollination and biodiversity in India. So very different again, but so either Guinea or India, depending on what time frame you're looking at.
Which is amazing. So all the places you seem to go are places that, most people, certainly when they're 19, but at any age, would not think of traversing 500 kilometers across a rainforest. So what inspired this? Like, was there a scientist or something that you saw that really, lit this spark or fire under you that we can use to inspire other kids that might be tuning in today?
I don't think I have one person specifically. I mean, I think probably just desperately trying to do loads of stuff in my life and making the most of it. Trying to combine my sort of scientific interest to learn more about the world with actually going out there and doing things. So yeah, I'm sorry, I don't really have one person and one thing in particular, just desperately trying to pick off experiences, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, is there, again, you have all this diverse stuff coming up in your life in the next few years. Is there a particular field that drives you, a particular thing that drives you, or have you not found that yet? Or are you just like, you're just excited about everything? Is that the case? Because you've certainly seen it.
Excited about a lot of things. I mean, it's definitely going to be in the sort of conservation field. I mean, as broad as it is, but learning on protecting more of the world's wildlife and amazing richness, and trying to make it work for animals or organisms and humans at the same time, essentially.
Fantastic.